You know, back in 2013, NASA hit a huge milestone. For the first time ever, women made up exactly half of their new astronaut class. It was a massive step forward for equality in space exploration. But recently, a much bolder question has started to surface in space science circles, one that goes way beyond just including more women. The question is, should NASA send only women on the very first human mission to Mars? Now, I know how that sounds. It sounds like a clickbait headline or a heated debate from a sci-fi forum. But this idea isn't coming from Twitter threads. It's rooted in real research, hard physiological data, and the massive logistical problems of planning a trip to another planet. So today, let us get into the actual evidence behind this proposal and figure out if it really has scientific weight. First up, let's talk physiology. If you had to guess NASA's top medical concern for astronauts on long-duration missions, what would you say? Most people think it's bone density loss or muscle atrophy. But surprisingly, the biggest worry right now is vision loss. Several male astronauts have come back from just 6-month stints on the International Space Station with long-term, sometimes permanent, vision impairment. And that's after only 6 months. A trip to Mars is about 8 months each way, plus whatever time you spend on the surface. And here's the really striking part of the data. So far, there have been 0 confirmed cases of this long-term vision impairment in female astronauts. None. Not a single one. Now, when you're 200 million miles from the nearest eye doctor, being able to see clearly is pretty mission critical. So from a purely physiological standpoint, this one factor alone gives women a pretty significant advantage. Of course, there are some disadvantages. The data shows women are more likely to experience space motion sickness when they first get into orbit. They have a higher rate of urinary tract infections, and they can have more trouble with their circulation readjusting when they return to Earth's gravity. But think about it. None of those are mission-critical threats. They're manageable issues. They're not like going blind on the surface of Mars. Okay, but what about the big one? Radiation. This is a huge concern for any deep space mission. And it's true, women do have a higher statistical risk of developing radiation-induced cancers. In fact, NASA currently has a lower lifetime radiation exposure limit for female astronauts than for male astronauts. But here's the irony. A mission to Mars is so long and exposes everyone to so much galactic radiation that even male astronauts would likely exceed their own lifetime limits. This means that radiation isn't really a gender-specific problem for a Mars mission. It's a mission-level hazard for everyone. You absolutely need a robust radiation shielding solution for the spacecraft and habitats, regardless of who is on board. So while the risk is different, the solution has to be the same for everyone. It's a problem that has to be solved for the mission itself, which kind of neutralizes it as a deciding factor between genders. Next, let's look at the psychological factors. NASA's official stance is that once astronauts are selected and trained, there are no major psychological differences in performance between men and women in space. However, if you look at data from other programs and studies, a different picture starts to emerge. Russia's space program, China's space program, and even the old, unofficial Mercury 13 tests in the U.S. back in the 60s all reported similar findings. They consistently found that female candidates communicated more effectively, adapted better to long periods of isolation, and showed fewer conflict-prone tendencies in small groups. Now, imagine being on a 2 to 3 year journey to Mars. You restuck inside a spacecraft that's roughly the size of a small apartment with the same few people for years. In that environment, things like communication, adaptability, and group cohesion aren't just soft skills. They are critical for survival and mission success. The slightest interpersonal friction can escalate into a major problem when you can't just walk away. So, this psychological data suddenly becomes extremely important. But the most surprising argument for an all-female crew might be the economics. This part sounds almost too simple, but the numbers are staggering. On average, women are smaller and have a different metabolism, meaning they require fewer calories per day to maintain their health and perform the same physical tasks as men. Think about the logistics of a Mars mission. You can recycle air, you can recycle water, but you absolutely cannot recycle food. Every single calorie for the entire 3-year mission has to be packed and launched from Earth. Less food means less mass. Less mass means less propellant needed to get that mass out of Earth's gravity and all the way to Mars. And less propellant means a dramatically lower cost. How much lower? So let's piece this all together. Let's run a hypothetical. What if, in the coming years, we develop fantastic radiation shielding that makes that problem manageable for everyone? But what if the vision impairment issue in men proves to be a really tough nut to crack, with no easy solution? And what if further psychological studies continue to show that all-female crews are more cohesive and better suited for long-term isolation? And on top of all that, what if sending an all-female crew genuinely saves billions of dollars that could be used for, say, a better science package or a backup lander? At that point, the question is no longer, should we make sure to include women? The question logically becomes, why would we send men at all? If the primary goal of the very first human mission to Mars is to succeed, to prove it can be done, and to ensure the crew comes back alive, then you have to minimize every single known risk. This brings us to a fascinating intersection of ethics and engineering. Is this about giving one group an advantage, or is it about safety? Is choosing a crew based on gender a form of discrimination, or is it just rational risk management? From a pure mission design perspective, if one demographic consistently demonstrates a lower physiological and psychological risk profile for a specific mission, choosing that group isn't favoritism. It's just good engineering. You're building the mission for the highest probability of success. The success of the first Mars mission isn't just symbolic. It's existential for the future of human spaceflight. A failure could set back exploration for decades. So, if all the data we've discussed today continues to hold up, should the first humans to walk on Mars be an all-female crew? I'm really curious to hear your take on this. This is a complex topic with a lot of different angles. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a logical step, or a step too far? I'll be reading through them, and will feature some of the most interesting arguments in a future video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the future of space exploration.